Uh, just to recount, over the last 14 months since our inauguration last January, we had the big inauguration event, and then we had about 8 workshops, 7+1 workshops. Then we had 2 demo days. Each demo day was preceded by intense mentoring by the mentoring teams and the cohort managers, and that process lasted about 3 to 4 months. So we did demo day number 1 in 25th September last year, and demo day number 2 on 24th January this year. And now our team is very inventive. They're thinking of all sorts of new things to do, but there's also enormous amount of effort, and we are run by volunteers. I'm the only full-time guy, but everybody else is a volunteer. So that makes it a difficult call. Now, some of the goals that we have are for our startups to be educated, leading on to investment, and that stage has been progressing very well. The second stage in the startup's journey is to be able to go to the market. Now, we will not be able to satisfy everybody here, possibly not the people who are in B2C market. But for the B2B guys, one of the things I ran upon based on casual conversation with some of the system integrators is that the system integrators would be happy to take some of our select startups to the market where there is a fit between what the startups are doing and their customer needs. Now, I started with discussions with the top 4 in India. That is Tata Consultancy, Infosys, HCL, and Wipro, and they're very positively looking forward to it. And here in America, I had a discussion with our core team, had a discussion with Capgemini, and we are very fortunate. We're going to have Lanny speak today about how they can help our startup on their journey. The final stage for any startup's journey is the exit. And 90% of the startups we've seen, at least historically, have been going the acquisition route. And for the acquisition, the best sort of entities to acquire a startup are the venture capital arms of these large companies based in Silicon Valley. I call them ISVs at times because they are people who build product, companies like Google, Cisco, Oracle, Citrix, Juniper, you name it. And the Valley is full of these companies. And they are typically the companies that acquire the startups. And that's 90% of the game. So this is the first attempt at getting a potential acquirer to come and talk about their journey. What do they see the technology map to be, and what do they see their product development map to be, and where are the areas that they acquire companies, and where are the places where they invest in companies. So for that, we will have just one second. We will have Steve Wilson from where is he? Where's Steve? There you are. Steve Wilson from Citrix. He's the VP of Product and Cloud. He will speak about that. Another interesting experiment we tried, again, these things just happened, There are co-founders, potential co-founders who said, what, we want to start a company, but we are co-founder material, but we don't have a company to join. We'd rather join hands with another startup and get moving. So I sent out an email blast inviting co-founders. And I was surprised that in a small, minor blast, I got quite a substantial reaction. Because in the meantime, the startups also were saying, what, I've got this gap to fill. Somebody's weak on the marketing side, somebody's weak on the fundraising side, and they say, what, if we had a co-founder who could fill that gap, we would have a whole team, a complete team. So keeping that in mind, we put that initial seed out, and now I realize that if we really go full blast at it, there are many, many IIT co-founders who we can unearth, who'd come out and say, we want to do it, but we don't have probably as many startups right now being mentored, and cohort number 3 is going to start next month, for which I think many of you have applied. The other thought, of course, that we had following from that is that if we get too many co-founders coming out wanting to join startups, we could probably sell it to these other colleges like BITS Pilani and IISc and IIMs who have startups, but they want to get into our education and mentoring scheme. And unfortunately, our precondition is that any startup must have at least one IIT co-founder. And after that, of course, most welcome to join us. So with that, I would like to welcome Steve Wilson, VP of Products and Clouds of Citrix, to come and give a talk. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Citrix for this wonderful arrangement that they've laid out for us, although there's great drinks out there, there's food after this, and this great facility, which I think last year was not available because it was still under construction. And there's Rajiv from IIT, Rajiv Sinha from IIT Kharagpur, who helped us get connected with Steve and get this whole thing going. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. I got it. I'm all set. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining us at Citrix. I am not an IIT alum, but Rajiv, who's taking pictures over there, asked if I would come and do an introduction to Citrix. And so what I want to do is take a few minutes of your time tonight, introduce you to kind of our thesis of what's interesting in the market, what we're doing, introduce you broadly to our product focus areas, and then talk a little bit about what we're doing in the M&A area. Citrix has been a pretty active acquirer over the last 10, 15 years. And I'll show you some of the types of companies that we've acquired and just give you an idea of what we're doing in that aspect of the market as well. So again, I'm Steve Wilson. I've been at Citrix for about 5 or 6 years. I was at Oracle and Sun Microsystems before that. I've also done a couple of startups in my time here at the Valley. So Citrix, really quick in a nutshell. We have about 10,000 employees today. The company will have its 30th anniversary this year, so not a startup. But we do have about 400,000 customers today. Those aren't people, those are companies. We think on average on a given day about 100 million people use our products. So today we have about $3 billion in revenue, and the market cap, depending on what the stock price is on the given day, is about $15 billion. So here's our basic thesis as a company, is we're looking to power better ways to work. Our companies are generally large corporations, although sometimes they're small businesses as well. And our customers are CIOs and IT groups who are trying to enhance the way that their employees work. When we look at the market broadly, we see a lot of mega trends that are going on. Our customers are going on to have a lot of new kinds of external pressure being put on them. New kinds of competitive forces. Security is a huge issue for them. Regulatory. On the other hand, there are new business demands. They're actually trying to go through what a lot of times we term digital transformations. They are going through acquisitions and divestitures. For large companies, those happen almost on a continual basis, and digesting not just small startup size acquisitions, but sometimes large acquisitions. When I was at Sun, we had 30,000 employees and got bought by Oracle that had 100,000. How do you take companies of that size and put them together? Huge technological challenges that come with that. And we think we're uniquely equipped to help our customers deal with those challenges. One of the big things going on in the market right now is with the war for talent that's out there. You're trying to get the best employees to work at your companies, and people want a great experience to work there. When you're not going to work at a startup with hopes of multi-million-dollar payouts, when you're going to work at a large company, a lot of times you're going there and you want a great place to work. So we're looking to help enhance that. When we look at this a little bit more specifically, when we see people doing their work every day, people are working on computers. They have too many different kinds of apps they're trying to deal with. They've got so many different kinds of applications. They've got Windows applications, SaaS applications, mobile applications. How do you find what you need to do all your work? On the other hand, all the investment in that software by that company may not be paying off. They're getting too little usage out of it, too little benefit out of it. And maybe worst of all, there's too much context switching going on. How many of you out there consider yourself to be a software developer? A lot of you. I haven't written a lot of code lately, but I wrote my share. And what we know is, and they've done a lot of studies on this, if you continuously interrupt software developers, you get into that flow and somebody interrupts you and you lose your place. And it takes you half hour, 45 minutes or more to get back into that flow. If you're getting interrupted by a new thing you need to do and switch contexts and switch to your phone, your IQ drops by 20 points. So how do we deal with this continual rush of all these different things coming at us? So we believe there is a better way to work, and that's what we're here to help deliver. Our product portfolios broadly fall into 3 categories. We have what we call the Citrix Workspace technologies. This is our oldest area. This is what the company was founded on. We have the Citrix networking technologies. A lot of this was based off of an acquisition that we did, Rajiv, 10, 15 years ago? Our newest area is what we call Citrix Analytics. So the Citrix Workspace, the idea is that our customers, even inside big corporations, want consumer-like experiences to access all of their applications and all of their data. But their applications are coming from all sorts of different places. They're legacy Windows applications, internal legacy web applications, new SaaS applications. Their documents are stored in on-prem file servers and in the cloud. It's all over the place. As an employee in a company this size, you're constantly searching for what you need to be able to find to do your work. And the Citrix Workspace brings it all together for you, whether it's hosted on-prem, in the cloud, no matter what application type it is, no matter what data type it is. Behind the scenes, though, there's a lot of networking that has to happen to make this come together. And that's what our Citrix networking portfolio is about. It's about producing all of the connections between all of your applications, your microservices, no matter what cloud they run in. It could be on-premises inside the data center at a large customer. It could be in one of the big public clouds like Amazon or Google or Microsoft. No matter where it is, we allow you to orchestrate all of the networking between those, ingress, egress, load balancing, and make sure that you securely get your payload from one place to another place with the best possible performance. The last area is Citrix Analytics. How many people's startup out there has something to do with analytics, artificial intelligence, or machine learning? All right, so it's not only you cool startups that get to do this stuff. We placed some big bets here a couple of years ago. We looked at our own portfolio, and we looked at what we had that we thought was really unique. And what we had was some really unique data streams. Where when you look at the 2 things I just showed, we see all of the users at a corporation, we see all of their devices, we see the content they're accessing, the applications they're accessing, and the networks they're accessing them over. What did we do with this data for the last 30 years? We dropped it on the floor and ignored it. Decided it was time to do something with that data. We built what we call the Citrix Analytics platform, where we bring all that data together so that our customers can gather insights from it and improve their businesses. First application we built on this platform is what we call Citrix Analytics for Security. It analyzes user behaviors, looks for risky behaviors, and can help enhance the security of your users, their devices, and your networks. Coming soon over the next year, we're going to be announcing productivity analytics and performance analytics. So that gives you a broad overview of Citrix as a company. I got some data from our group that specializes in M&A, and This actually shows you a snapshot of the acquisitions that we've done the last 15 years. There's a lot of them. I'm going to admit I've only been here 5 or 6 years. A lot of these names don't even look familiar to me. But they've all come together to build the portfolio that we have today. If you look at some of the big ones, Netscaler, this is our networking business that Rajiv runs engineering for. It's one of the older ones here, but it's actually turned into one of our larger businesses, billion-plus dollar business today. All the way up to our latest acquisition, whoops, go back, which is Sappho, which is a new way to deliver what we call micro applications. So taking the most interesting pieces of data out of these applications, making them more intelligent, and delivering them to users. We also do invest selectively in startups that we want to have closer working relationships with. These are a handful of the ones that we're invested in right now. Or sometimes we go in with existing larger funds like Andreessen Horowitz. So hopefully that gives you a picture of Citrix, gives you an idea of some of what we're doing in the M&A market. Really happy to have you guys here tonight, and hope you have a great rest of the evening. Thank you. Absolutely.
So, any questions you have?
Yeah, don't be shy. So we got one up here.
Yeah, I mean, we have not exactly the same space, but I see some connections because one of the things we see is like even the picture that you showed is the roads behind. You kind of showed that, and also when you say like you want to improve how you get to work, like I thought like you were talking about roads already. We are a startup actually developing automated driving, and in fact we use quite a few of the concepts, like including the hypervisor layer, like for a different purpose with safety assurance, and we have a few patents like on that front, and we're developing some core technology for achieving that higher reliability for getting to work with better assurance, like I should say. Like, so in a way, like it's a lot like kind of doing your work with assurance, I guess. My question is like, you know, is Citrix has any interest in looking into adjacent areas like that, like with out-of-the-box approach?
You know, one of the things that we've done in the last couple of years actually has been really focused around our efforts in these areas. You know, we actually, a little bit of trivia, about 3 years ago, we had one of the big activist investors come in and buy a few $100 million worth of stock. And basically what they did is send a letter to the board and said, you guys are doing too much crazy stuff. They shook us down. We actually spun off a few of those startups, shut down a few product lines. And you know what we did as a result is we doubled the market cap of the company. So we're pretty focused. I don't think we're going to get into doing self-driving cars, for example, but always interested in talking about cool ideas.
I have a question. Hi, I'm Dipti Desai, and really cool stuff what Citrix is doing. I've been affiliated with them many years. They give back also part of Save-a-thon, where they contributed their time and helped the cause. Loved the accelerator that you had. I know that was some of the crazy ideas were born over there, and it made sense that it doesn't add to the revenue, but it's good to see that you are encouraging all these startups here. I had a question, and you know you're doing so many different approaches with Hive and Fabric. You're doing co-creation probably, and with some of those late-stage startups, you're probably acquiring an early-stage startups. Wanted to know, I had two questions for you. One is, which approach works best, or is it case dependent? And second is, what are the 3 major areas that you're really focusing on where you want to bring in technologies from outside?
So great question. You know, obviously we do a combination of internal innovation as well as acquiring innovation and new routes to market. Rajiv and I were just in Bangalore last week at what we call our tech fair, which is our internal innovation challenge. We had 36 teams trying to invent new business ideas inside the company. In terms of acquisitions, we, over the life of the company, have acquired 2 different types of companies, I think, broadly from a profile perspective. We do what we call tech tuck-ins, where we're buying technology that we think fits well with our portfolio that may have not really proven itself in the market, or maybe has proven some customer fit but doesn't have large amounts of revenue. The challenge with those acquisitions are really, can we mesh that into our existing sales machinery and take it to market? The other types of acquisitions that we have done are larger ones that do have some proof in the market, come with their own sales force. Those obviously are more expensive and come with a different profile. So we've done both of those from sort of size and makeup. And from the perspective of being a founder selling to a bigger company, you've got to kind of look at it from what you're going to bring to the company in terms of where do you fit. From a technology area, I think areas that we're really interested in today, networking, cloud and networking, when you put them together, is absolutely Rajiv's favorite area. We're also very interested in AI, analytics, and security. I'd say those are the big top areas that we're seeing interest in the market and the places where we feel best equipped to kind of go to market. It's a great question.
Manish from IIT Bombay. So any interest in getting into healthcare or healthcare cloud or something?
So healthcare is our biggest vertical market. If you go to the hospital, I guarantee you that your doctor is looking at your healthcare records being delivered and secured by Citrix. I know the last time I went to the hospital and the triage nurse asked me for my insurance card, she said, "Oh my gosh, you work at Citrix," and she got all the doctors and nurses to come say hi to me. So we're absolutely interested in healthcare. Everybody, thank you very much. This was really fun. Have a great rest of the night.
Okay, the profile of the people here, it's limited. It's not like the demo days where we had 300 plus people. These are all startups and mentors, and the mentors are serial entrepreneurs who've been very, very successful. There are so many of them. There's Srini here, Ram over there, Wakar Hassan over there, Amit over there, Nat Natarajan. I mean, there are just so many of them, I just can't reel off all the names. Now, with that, I want to introduce to you Lanny Cohen, who's actually based in New York, but he got so excited about this idea about IIT startups, because we are the 4th largest unicorn generators in the world. He came down from New York 2 weeks ago, and he met Sudhir, Manoj, and me for breakfast. And then he's flown in just to, get a chance to address this limited group. We had to curtail the invitations this time to a very limited group. Lanny is the Global Chief of Innovation for Capgemini, one of the largest system integrators in the world. Lanny, please.
I'm good. Thank you, Manishi, and good evening, everyone. It is a unique opportunity. We have a very, very long-standing relationship with IIT Startups. As Manishi said, it began 2 weeks ago. So, my apologies if I don't know a lot about this organization, but he was right. I was very impressed with the time we had together a couple of weeks ago, and there's a few reasons for that. But before I get into that, let me just give you a little bit of my background. So I started with Ernst & Young, who you may know of, and then in 2000, Capgemini, with the breakups of kind of all the consulting practices with the big accounting firms, acquired our consulting business. So I've been with Capgemini since 2000. I ran our North American business for about 6.5 years, then took on a global role as the Chief Technology Officer, and about 18 months ago, are focused exclusively on innovation now, the Chief Innovation Office. And as part of that role, there's a lot to talk about in terms of our relationship with startups, which I'll get to. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to spend a few minutes just a little bit about Capgemini, for those of you who may not be that familiar with the company, then talk a little bit about our thesis on innovation, because I think it's rather unique, and I think something that will appeal and to you, and I think it differentiates us in the market. And then third, talk about startups and how we interact with startups and how we see the relationship forming and developing over time. So first of all, how many of you are familiar with Capgemini? You probably know us pretty well. That's great. So we're a company. We're about 14 billion euro in size. We have over 200,000 employees, and I'm very proud to say over 50% of that employee base is based in India. We have a very, very long relationship with IIT. Many of our people and our talent come out of IIT, so it's a very, very strong relationship and one we certainly respect and are very privileged to have. We just announced internally that India will now be the hub of innovation for Capgemini, which is a very, very interesting perspective. People typically think of innovation happening, in North America and in Europe and other locations around the world, which it certainly does. But we believe that the hub of innovation for Capgemini in terms of a lot of our discovery of innovation, a lot of our development of responses to innovation will be coming out of India in the future. And in 2 weeks, we have a major kickoff in India around that whole transformation that we're pursuing. So we're very, very excited, and India plays an incredibly important role in the entire Capgemini business model, and one that, again, we're committed to and will continue to be working on and with for the foreseeable future. Capgemini also was founded by an entrepreneur in his own right, someone from Grenoble, France, felt that right around the time of the 1968 Winter Olympics, if any of you remember those in Grenoble, he thought there was an opportunity and a need to provide some software developers to support a lot of the activity that was going on. He began his business with 6 people, a true startup, and today, as I said, we're over 200,000. And so we've been around for 51 years, and it's interesting because we've probably done between 50 and 60 acquisitions over that time. So being an acquisitive company and working with smaller firms has always been in the DNA of Capgemini. And in fact, one of the things we pride ourselves on is a very entrepreneurial culture. We're a very decentralized organization, very autonomous, and very little command and control. So I think as we interact with startups around the world, I think we have a little bit of an affinity to some of the way startups think and the way we need to associate with them. Some of our competitors, much more command and control. When they deal with a startup, it's like, here's how we work and kind of fit to our model. In fact, if our CEO and chairman were standing here, he would tell you that as we acquire companies, he challenges us to become more like the acquiree. He said, let's not impose our culture and our standards and our norms and our values on that acquiree. Let's learn from them and let's try to become more like them. So I think it's a very different kind of attitude shift and mindset in terms of interaction with our partners and startups in the market. But I'll come back to that in a little bit. So the second thing, I want to talk about innovation, because again, I think we have a very, very different model. So our thesis around innovation is that innovations are very pervasive in the market. There's an abundance of innovation in the market today. If you go back 10, 15, 20 years ago and you look at kind of the innovation paradigms that existed in the market, typically you'd have an innovation cycle that would be around every 5 to 7 years. Most innovations, and I'm talking kind of enterprise kind of grade innovations, would come about out of the big tech companies, maybe some R&D departments and major global corporations, maybe some quasi-government or academic institutions and things like that. But the sources of innovation were pretty well known and pretty well documented. And then the third thing about innovation in the past, too, is the impacts were pretty narrow. Most of the innovation would affect a certain domain within an enterprise. So if you think about innovation today, very, very different, right? So innovations are happening, every 5 to 7 hours. You look at an Amazon as an example, thousands of innovations coming out of them a year. You look at the R&D budgets of some of the most significant innovators in the world today, and they're in the billions of dollars size. So innovation is not a scarce commodity, and it's not an infrequent occurrence. It's happening constantly. The second thing, the sources of innovation, with all due respect to everybody in the room today, is no longer in the confines of some of these big global enterprises. Innovations is more coming out of millions of startups around the world. And that's a very, very difficult ecosystem for many companies to navigate and understand. And the impacts of innovation are very broad today. We don't talk about innovation just, innovating something in the data center or innovating something in terms of a product portfolio. But innovation now, can disrupt, as we know, entire industries, entire domains within the market. So the whole nature of innovation is very, very different. In most companies, the way they've been responding to this is very predictable. So typically companies will set up an innovation lab, typically out here in Silicon Valley, thinking if they have a facility out here, they can become innovative, which is kind of an interesting concept. Set up a facility and all of a sudden your company's innovative. Or they may engage with or acquire a company like yours, a startup, and automatically they're innovative. Or they set up a corporate venture fund, or they partner with a private equity firm, and all those things. Or maybe they do some prototyping. That's kind of the new thing now. Like, we can prototype, we fail fast and fail often, and this type of thing, and therefore we're innovative. But if you look at all those responses, there's very little evidence that any of those have moved the needles of any companies anywhere in the world. So we were intrigued by that, and we said, well, kind of all these companies seem to be doing everything that everybody says you should do, but why aren't they getting the benefit? And as we explored that, we found the real issue was around adoption. And how do you adopt these new technologies and these innovations and really change and consume these things? And not only that, how do you do it fast? How do you do it at scale? How do you do it with a high degree of certainty? How do you do it in a secure way so you can manage the risk of your organization? And how do you do it more and more with intelligence baked in and in a sustainable way? So what we found in our thesis is around this concept of applied innovation. And that's where we chose to hang our hat in the market. So we help our global clients applying innovation really at speed and at scale. That's the game we're in. So part of it is technology, part of it is culture, part of it is talent, part of it is process, part of it is mindset, part of it is leadership, and there's a very, very broad domain. Because at the end of the day, what Capgemini does for a living is help companies transform to a digital future. And that transformation journey requires a lot more than just a new shiny object. It really involves the ability to apply that shiny object in a way where value is created and is able to be sustained. So that's kind of our thesis on innovation. So what does that mean from a startup perspective? Well, one of the things we've done in terms of this concept of applied innovation is not only have we launched this discipline called applied innovation, but we've stood up around the world today 16 applied innovation exchanges. And we have one here locally in the city, which you're all more than welcome to come and visit, and I hope you do. But these applied innovation exchanges are very interesting locations because they're all built on the premise of co-development, co-innovation, co-location. And one of the fundamental principles around this is an ecosystem of startups. Capgemini is one of the firms that admits right out of the gate, we don't have all the answers. And that may sound surprising coming from a big global SI. We tell our clients, you don't have all the answers, we don't have all the answers, but what we can do is we can orchestrate a global ecosystem of startups. And amongst all of that, the answer will be there. And now it's just a matter of bringing that all together, addressing the problem statement you have, and ultimately coming out with a solution at the end of the day. So startups are very, very important and very, very integral to the Capgemini operating model. In fact, so important that we've now laid out a global governance model of how do we help our organization manage our relationships with startups around the world. So if you look at these 16 locations, they're very, very strategically chosen because they're in the hubs of where there's a lot of startup activities. So I'm not going to go through all 16 for you, but I'll give you a couple of examples. So certainly we're here in San Francisco in the Bay Area because this is the epicenter, if you will, of startups and innovation. We've got a facility in New York because particularly when it comes to areas like financial services and fintechs, it's a big, big location for that. We're in Toulouse, France. Why? Because aerospace and defense, there's a lot of startup activity in that industry there. We're in Lille, France. Okay, why? Because there's so much startup activity in the retail industry there. And then we're also in Munich. Why? Because of automotive and industrial manufacturing that occurs in Germany. And then you take some other cities like Stockholm, in London, in Paris, in Singapore, in Mumbai. We'll be opening a facility in Hyderabad later this year because these all help round out our ecosystem experience where we can get access to the right kind of technologies and innovations that we need to bring the right answer to our clients at the end of the day. And then the third piece I want to comment on quickly, because I'm starting to smell the food. It smells incredibly good. But the third thing I want to comment on is actually how do we engage with startups and kind of what does that model look like? And basically, if you think about, and I like Manishi's term journey before, because I think that's how we think about it too, almost like a maturity model. So there's different ways we engage with startups. So one is when we're in front of a customer, sometimes for the very first time, and we're exploring the art of the possible. What might a solution look like? Or how do you address a problem statement? Or what are some of the opportunities that exist in the market to take advantage of? That's kind of art of the possible. So we may source a handful of startups to come in to a workshop and basically talk to our customers about the things they're doing and how they see the market. There's no commitment at that point to the customer to even move forward with the startup, with Capgemini. We're just, again, we're conditioning the battlefield, if you will, for subsequent conversations. The second phase of the journey is more where we're engaging in a specific selling opportunity. So now we believe the customer is interested in pursuing some type of engagement and solution. And here we'll start to develop a relationship with that startup and make sure the startup is mature enough that, that if the services are acquired, there's something behind, the mirror, if you will. Okay, so there, we'll start to look at, the investment model of the startup. We'll look at the leadership of the startup. We'll look at the technical quality of the product. We'll look at the scalability. We'll look at things like security and that type of thing. So we're looking at that point a much more kind of mature perspective of the startup and what they have to offer. The next phase of the journey is now client says, love the idea, we want to engage now. So now we're signing a contract to actually deliver something. So now it's a different kind of relationship with the startup. It's a real contractual relationship. You need to deliver this at these timeframes and that type of thing. And then the fourth phase is more now where we think there's opportunities to replicate these solutions or to engage on a longer term basis. And now we move into more of a partnership relationship. We're here, we think we can really do business together, over the long term. And then we have another organization that helps manage our partnership relationships, and that's kind of where that goes. And then, soon that we'll be kind of talking about, I can't talk about it yet, but soon we'll be talking about publicly more of an investment kind of relationship that may occur as well. But those first four are kind of the journey that we go through today. So we're very intrigued, again, by the opportunity to work with startups. We believe it's a natural part of how we go to market and how we deliver services. It's very, very integral to our business model going forward. We as an organization, I'll be fully transparent with you, we're still learning about relationships with startups, okay? And I would tell you, if any of my competitors say they've got it mastered, they're giving you, well, they're not being truthful. Let's leave it at that. Because I think we're all learning. This is a new space. It moves very fast, but we're all learning and I think, engaging with the right objective in mind. At the end of the day, it's very client-centered, though. That's what's key to us, okay? So whether we're serving customers in financial services or life sciences or manufacturing or automotive, startups are all a very, very integral part of what we're doing and will be doing going forward. One of the other people I want to introduce you to the audience is Eric Yang. Eric's back here. Eric is based here in San Francisco, and he looks after our partnership ecosystem. So all of our relationships with startups, here, Eric's kind of the main interface too. So, so when we're done, please take the opportunity to meet Eric and ask questions as well. So just to summarize, again, we're incredibly excited about this opportunity to work with IIT Startups, to get to know many of you. Rest assured that we have a lot of respect for startups, and we see it as a very, very collaborative model going forward. And I'm really, looking forward to the opportunities to engage and hopefully have a very, very long relationship together, be it here or perhaps with some of your entities or your friends or your operations back in India as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, before I ask you to ask your questions, I want to tell you that we proposed to the big system integrators two things. One is take our startups to your customers in the market. That's one. Number two is typically, I don't know about Capgemini, but at least the Indian SIs, the big four that we met, they have about 5 to 10% of their staff strength on the bench, which means if they have about 100,000, 200,000 people, you can assume that about at least 10,000, 20,000 people are sitting on the bench. And if the skill set of those people on the bench match the requirements of a startup here, why don't they do some back-end work for our startup guys, not for money, but for stock? And I said, heck, you never know, you might just produce the next Google and you can make a lot of money. So basically, we are pushing the system integrators also to look at the opportunity of making available that sunk cost of theirs, which is their bench. A question came from there. Ajit? Your voice is not strong enough. Take the mic.
So the Valley, if you count the number of startups, there are probably over 10,000 startups in the Valley. When you get a customer request for a particular solution, how do you guys go about finding the startup that meets your specific need before you even take it to the customer?
Yeah.
You started by saying, we go to the customer and if the customer likes blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But how do you even select the startup
to
qualify to take you to the customer?
Yeah, so I'll give you one answer to that, and then I think Eric can share some of his perspectives when we break. But there's a couple things that go on. So I said we're in very strategic locations around the world for a very, very good reason. So I think proactively, we're looking at the market all the time, okay, and we're looking at we kind of know the industries we serve. We know the kind of solutions that typically, we're going to be asked to deliver. So we're constantly, looking around the world, for startups that, we think we want to engage with and starting to build relationships. So there's kind of a very proactive piece to the puzzle, kind of ahead of the curve. Now, before the request even comes in, we're doing that. And we probably have, I don't know, I'm guessing 1,200 or so startups, kind of in a database globally that we're kind of curating and monitoring all the time. Second thing is we have very strong relationships. When Steve showed you some of the venture funds that they work with. So Andreessen Horowitz was one of the top ones. That's a key partner of ours as well. So through those relationships, they're informing us as well of startups that they think are worth us, having a look at and meeting and that type of thing. So that's another kind of avenue. And then third is more of a reactive approach. So now the request actually comes in, we'll look at our database and say, is there something there that, we think could fit the bill? And if the answer is no, or even if the answer is yes, we may do some kind of more reactive looking at that point. We may kind of mobilize our own network and do some searching around and see who else, may be out there. So it's kind of a constant process. It's not just reactive waiting. We try to get ahead of the curve as much as we can, build up that repository, curate it all the time. What are we learning? What do we know? if we work with any of them. And the commitment we make to our customers, which is very important, is our customers don't want us restrained to a local geography where they are for the answer. So if we find the best startup for a piece of work we're doing in New York is in Singapore, our customers expect us to go get that startup out of Singapore, and bring to the table. So again, I think, working with us, there's a chance that there's exposure on a global basis, not just on a local basis. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Just one thing, your question.
Similar question on the similar lines. I'm Chandra. I'm with a Citrix-backed startup. So what the question is, do you have a preference of what type of startup you choose to engage with? There are startups that are very early stage, no revenue or little revenue. There are startups that are cash flow positive without taking VC investment. Do you have a preference one way or the other?
So if you think about the maturity model that I described to you, that journey, again, the preferences evolve over time. So if we're just doing an art of the possible kind of thing, we don't care much about the maturity of the startup. If they've got something elegant to say and something compelling to show, that it's typically sufficient. Now, if we're going to engage with them in a contractual relationship, obviously the maturity, the sophistication, the ability to deliver becomes much more important as we go. Because we prefer to avoid a situation where we start a piece of work and then the next week the startup's done. That's not going to serve us well or our customer well. So it's really, if you look at the journey, the maturity starts to increase as the journey progresses. Okay, does that help?
Yeah, so you prefer the latter, that's the answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take the last question here.
My name is Ajay Jotwani. I'm the co-founder CEO of I2 Chain startup, which will be a unicorn in 2022. My question to you is, as a startup, I want to know what is what impact do you provide to Capgemini as a chief innovation officer? If I can help you to enable you in your impact to Capgemini, which means are you impacting their top line, which I perhaps don't think that you are really impacting it.
Yeah.
Are you impacting their improved renewal rate? Are you going from 80% to 84% of renewals because you have investments in the innovations, or are you? Where is really the impact that you are providing within Capgemini, and what do you expect a startup to be able to provide there?
Do you know my CEO? It sounds like you might have talked to him. That's actually an excellent question. So I think our role is really around profitable, sustained growth. If I had to boil it down to one thing, that's what my business is all about: profitable, sustained growth for our account teams working for our customers. And I think specifically, what can you provide? I mean, if we have a steady stream of ideas and relationships with yourselves, that's probably the most important thing that we can get out of an ecosystem of startups. Because again, if you go back to my narrative that we don't have all the answers, our clients still have needs, and we've got to service those needs. So the more that we're aware of and that we can respond to those needs in a very effective way, and we can kind of build the relationships ahead of the curve. Because of the relationship, if you can inform us of things you're seeing in the market and trends and how you're responding to that, that's all very good intelligence that we can benefit from as well. And then I would say, without us imposing on you, but aligning to how we work. And again, what's very important in our commitment to customers is speed, scale, certainty, sustainability, intelligence. That's what we're trying to optimize. Those are the principles. So knowing that, aligning to that, is a big benefit to us as well.
Okay, no, you're
We'll talk
done. You're done.
at the break.
We're running short of time now. I have a
Am I
question
done?
for you.
Oh, you got a question.
No, I have a question for you. I think one of the greatest contributions a big system integrator like yourself can make to the startup community is because only 10% of our companies go IPO. 90% go for acquisition, the easy route. The discipline involved in doing an IPO from day one of conception of the product is so great and so daunting that most of our IITians do not like to go the IPO way. So can big system integrators provide that compliance, management, et cetera, guidance to the startups that from an early stage to take them on their journey?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think some of our competitors have more formal kind of accelerator programs and incubation programs, that type of thing. We partner for that. We don't actually have a formal accelerator or incubation program. What we do have is we have residency programs and mentoring and coaching programs, though, that we think are highly valuable as well. So typically, again, depending on the nature of the relationship and the maturity of the relationship, startups can engage with that. And we love models where we're working together and we're co-locating, because then, if I were in your shoes, that's a huge benefit because, one, you've got like a front row seat to the activity that's going on, in our company, especially in our innovation center. So you're kind of seeing the ebb and flow of clients. You're seeing the kind of the dialogues that we're having with customers and what they're talking about. We have a lot of business executives that come into these centers as well as IT executives. So you really get a front row seat for a lot of that activity. You're seeing some of the techniques that we use in our work that you can benefit from. So we think that's a model that's very, very, very positive for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manishi.